So there we were, teachers, first day back from school after the summer vacation, all gathered for our first faculty meeting in the library, new teachers, returning teachers. And the director asks that each of us quickly just say something that we had done over the summer. Something meaningful, something important, something fun, whatever. So we heard about trips, we heard about family events, we heard about conferences. And then we get to Patty. Patty is, or still is, the head of the phys ed department. And Patty said, well, one day there was a knock on our door, and when we opened it, there was a TV crew, and a chef came and cooked us dinner. And we went, what? This was not the usual summer sharing story. So Patty had to, we gave Patty time to tell the story. And Patty explained that her husband and her were, it was their actual wedding anniversary, and they got up that morning and she and her daughter baked a cake. That was how they were going to celebrate the day, have this dessert, cake as this for dessert for dinner. And as the morning went on, there was a knock on the door, and she opened it. And there was the host of one of Food Network's shows, asking if they could come in, he had a chef with him, to prepare a meal with whatever she had in the house. They were going to prepare dinner. Well, Patty said she had to think about whether the house was clean, but, I think most people would wonder about that. It's not just the people coming in, but the whole world watching this show at some point later. And then she had to wonder about what did she have in her pantry and fridge. She could only think of a couple of boxes of pasta and cans of vegetables she had bought at Costco. She thought she might have some meat in the freezer, but she wasn't even sure, and it would have been there for a long time. But she was game, so she invited them in, and they came in, and the chef used the pasta. Patty said she used the dry herbs that were in her pantry that the expiration date had long passed. She showed us, actually, because I watched the show, that if you put those dried herbs between the palms of your hand and sort of rub them together, you woke up the smells and whatever. And she found some pork, I think it was, in the freezer, and she cooked a meal that was amazing. And they sat outside on the patio, enjoyed that meal as a family. They even provided a musician. And what a celebration it was. Out of very little, a wonderful feast was prepared. It was something she was always going to remember. Very much the same as those people who sat on the hillside and shared the meal we heard about in our gospel story today. They remembered how Jesus took very little and made it into a feast. The story was so important in the community that it was told over and over again, and we know that because that's the only miracle, apart from the resurrection, that is told in every one of the Gospels. In fact, 2 Gospels tell it twice. 6 times we hear about Jesus taking very little and making it more than enough. Now, it's really very interesting the way John tells the story. The Gospel of John says that Jesus saw the need as the people approached. Jesus recognized that there was a need and said to the disciples, where can we buy food for these people? Where can we buy food for these people? It was going to be a partnership. The work of meeting the needs of the community was not just on the shoulder of the disciples, but Jesus was going to play a part. And Philip, just as we probably would have, said to Jesus, if I worked for 10 months and used all of my pay, I would not be able to buy enough food so that each person could even get a bite. We can't do anything. Let's just send them away. Let them go try to find the food for themselves. They have a better chance of finding food if they leave and go on their own. But Jesus knew that if each of those disciples brought just a little, he could do much. And with 5 loaves, 5 barley loaves, and 2 fish, Jesus fed the crowd of 5,000. You see, sometimes we feel overwhelmed by the needs that exist in the world. We hear about all kinds of tragedies, all kinds of hunger, not just for food. We hear about people who need help. They might be even in our midst, in our communities. And we think we don't have enough. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough resources. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough skills. We don't have enough space. We don't have enough. But Jesus says, bring what you have, whatever it is. I will take it. I will bless it. I will break it. And we will share it. And it will be enough for that time. And more than enough. We will meet that need together. And if we haven't heard that in the story, perhaps the actions of Jesus sound familiar. He took the bread. He blessed the bread. He broke the bread. He distributed the bread. It is Holy Eucharist. It is the feast that feeds each and every one of us. Often we think of the Holy Eucharist as a reflection, a redoing, a memory of the Last Supper. But that feeding of the 5,000 on that hillside that evening was the first supper. And each and every time you are invited to come to this table, to come to this feast, you come to be fed so that you can go out and participate in the work of feeding others. And don't worry about whether you have enough. Whatever you have is enough when Jesus is offered to Jesus for service to the community. Whatever you have is enough. Do not stop because you think that you can make no difference. Do not stop because you think that you're too young or too old. Do not stop because you think you don't have the energy. Do not stop because you think you don't have partners in the work. We have Jesus. Jesus ready to take what we have and to use it. to bless others. Amen.
Amen.